Just weeks before her 25th birthday, Maria Jimenez was killed in a car crash. The driver, Nick Tay, who was 24 years old at the time, was uninsured and driving at 110 miles an hour. He survived.
Well, despite being overcome with grief, Maria's parents, Elizabeth and Fernando, found the strength to not only forgive Nick, but they invited him into their home and became a pillar of support for him during his time in prison.
Well, since his release in September 2019, Nick has been living in Singapore and has gone on to have a family, or is going on to have a family of his own. He joins us now from his home, and Elizabeth and Fernando join us in the studio. So welcome to all of you. Nick,
welcome.
Thank you for joining us, Nick. Let's start, first of all, with Mum and Dad, because she was a bright girl studying linguistics, three languages. How would you describe Maria?
She was lovely. You know, she was always sweet and always concerned about people. Since little, she always wanted to help others.
Yeah. And Nick, this was a quality that you saw for yourself, and you met in a music group and you were drawn to her immediately, and eventually it sort of started as a friendship and you became a couple, and you thought that actually this was going to be the one, she was going to be the one for you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So on this night, you'd been out for dinner and she'd had a drink and she asked you if you would drive her car home. And it turns out that you weren't insured on the car that you were driving. As Phil said there, you were driving incredibly fast down this road. What do you remember happening?
I remember the crash actually happening in slow motion. I was on the A3 and I was turning into the Kingston exit. And then I lost control of the car. I remember slowing down, but I guess it wasn't enough. And then I lost control of the car, and then I hit the central reservation. And at the moment of impact, I remember seeing the airbags just come out in slow motion, and then the glass shattering in slow motion. And then after that, I lost consciousness. I didn't know what happened. And then the next thing I know was I was hanging from my seatbelt, upside down in the car.
And as we've said, and Holly was mentioned there, not insured, didn't have a UK licence, driving very, very quickly, 110 miles an hour, sort of way over twice the speed limit there. At what point were you told the consequences of your actions?
It was actually quite a few months after, because I had a lawyer, and at first he told me not to plead guilty because he genuinely didn't believe that I was going to be convicted, and it was only, I think, a month before my court trial that he told me what was really going to happen, and he prepared me for the trial and the conviction.
Back, so yeah, because we'll come to the sentencing. So 7.5 years for causing death by dangerous driving. Judge ruled that because you were pleading guilty, a third was taken off the sentence, half will be served in prison. That night, was it the ambulance teams that told you that Maria was dead?
If I'm not wrong, it was the police, because both of us, we went our separate ways. For some reason, I was not allowed to go with her in the same ambulance, and I only heard about her death in the radio. I was in my ambulance going to the hospital, and then the police woman who was beside me, she got the radio from supposedly the helicopter, and then she broke the news that Maria didn't make it.
How do you feel when you find out that you've been responsible for someone who's, you know, so not just, obviously any death is appalling, but this is someone that you loved?
Exactly. I mean, it was the hardest thing that I ever had to go through myself. I mean, hearing about her death, I remember I was collapsed on the ambulance floor, and I couldn't move at all. Even if I wanted to, I could not bring myself to move my body. And I remember that they had to wheel me from the ambulance into the hospital to complete all my scans and everything. So it was truly life-shattering for me at that point.
And so in your world at this moment, Fernando, you get a knock on the door at 6 a.m. and you were told the news that no parent wants to hear, that your daughter has lost her life. You then have to go and break that news to your family, and I can't imagine how painful and how difficult and how hard that must have been for him. We are all incredibly sorry for that loss that you have. But what's extraordinary about what you did as a family was your reaction. You went to the hospital because you wanted to see your daughter, but then you had this pull towards Nick. You wanted to see him, and was it to make sure if he was okay? What was that?
Yes, I was there waiting to see her body. We were waiting for ages. And then suddenly I thought, wait a minute. It was like shaking my head. Wait a minute, where is Nick? Who is with him? You know, I was surrounded by, you know, friends and people close to us. And then I thought, what about Nick? So I reached out to his youth pastor. And I said, could you please find out if I can go? I want to go and be with him. And yeah.
You, Fernando, you had a sort of a different reaction. You went through the stages of grief and anger. I mean, I think you said what many parents would say. Right, that's it. I'm going to kill him. But thankfully, you got over that as well. You say your faith helped you so much so that he was at uni. Then those halls finished and he had nowhere to go. He came to live with you. Until the trial, which he mentioned a moment ago, and so he was in your house. You were looking after him. He was one of the family.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you do that? What was that? What? How do you get to that? How does that happen?
Well, for me, it was easy. I was glad he chose us because, he was offered other two places to go. And I said, listen, you can go to the other places, but no one is going to look after you like me. And I'm going to cook for you and wash your clothes and all that.
I mean, that takes incredible strength. I mean, also you approached the judge, you talked to his lawyers, you spoke to the police, because you didn't see any point after the loss that you'd suffered in making a criminal out of him. You didn't want him to go to prison at all, which inevitably is what happened. But how do you do that? Because I think people will be, people will admire you, but people will think, how? How can you do that? How can you forgive to that point where you can actually I mean, you go on to say you love him like a son.
Yes.
How?
Well, perhaps it would be good to know that that's a strength and that's understanding the how comes out of deep convictions in our life that we should love people and forgive them. That nobody was going to return Maria to us. And there was no point to trying to find who is guilty and what are you going to do and justice and vengeance. The point is to see what good you could do out of this chaos and problem. And that was particularly for me was the important thing, because I didn't feel like Elizabeth at all. She was happy, or she saw him straight away. I was a little bit angry. I was a little bit upset. Normally, as a man, as a father, I said, why he didn't die? Die him and let my daughter be with me. That would be better. Would be right. So, but at the moment that came, the crucial moment in my life was when he came into our flat and he asked me to forgive him. Forgiveness is powerful. I got a sentence that is called forgiveness power. And when you forgive, it really releases power into you to be able to control your mind, your heart, your emotion, and yourself. And with difficulty, actually, very much difficulty, because he was almost crying. He hugged me and he cried and almost asking for mercy. Please forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. Yeah. And I did forgive him.
Yeah.
Well, it is truly remarkable. And Nick, you served 18 months in prison, some of it in Wandsworth, which is that's a tough one. You were then released and deported back to Singapore. And you guys still talk every day. I mean, you've now got a partner, you've got a baby on the way, and a whole new life. But you still keep in touch.
Yes. Actually, just a few days ago, I got a parcel from Elizabeth and Fernando. Things were for my baby, none for me, but I'm glad they're for my baby.
And their forgiveness, how has that helped you to move on with what you went through?
It was incredible. Without them, it would have been impossible for me to move on. I mean, just getting over all the guilt and shame and condemnation is one thing. And then having them to love me and telling me that they've forgiven me is actually kick-started my own journey of forgiving myself. Yeah, so, I mean, it's truly remarkable.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you
for
very
talking to
much.
us today.
Thank you both as well.
Lovely
Thank
to
you.
meet you.
Yeah, it really is.
Really lovely to meet you.